Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our commencement speaker, Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, or in government acronym jargon, NIAID. For most physician scientists, developing effective therapies for formerly fatal inflammatory diseases such as polyarteritis nodosa, Wegener's granulomatosis, would represent the culmination of a career's work. For Dr. Anthony Fauci, this work, accomplished in the 1970s while he was a senior investigator at the NIH, National Institutes of Health, was merely the opening act of an extraordinary career. A native New Yorker, he graduated from Regis High School on the Upper East Side, where incidentally he captained the basketball team. He received his bachelor's degree from the College of the Holy Cross and graduated first in his class in 1966 at Cornell Medical College. Except for a brief stint back at Cornell as chief resident, his entire career has been spent at NIAID. Two key turning points in his career occurred in 1981 when his own laboratory took on the challenge of working on a new, mystifying immune deficiency disorder that came to be known as AIDS, and in 1984 when he was appointed director of NIAID. In both capacities, he has made seminal contributions to understanding how the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, destroys the body's immune defenses, and has been instrumental in developing highly effective strategies for therapy, as well as moving us forward toward a vaccine long hoped for to prevent HIV infection. Remarkably, he has gone from being burned in effigy by AIDS activists in the early days of the epidemic to winning their trust and respect. He has served as a key advisor to several presidents and to the Department of Health and Human Services on global AIDS issues and on preparedness against other emerging infectious disease threats. His crucial role in shaping the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, is one tangible example of his efforts. He is the author, co-author, or editor of over 1,100 scientific publications and textbooks, and has been elected to all of the major honorific organizations, including the Institute of Medicine and the National Academy of Sciences. He has received numerous prestigious awards, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the National Medal of Science, and the Mary Woodard Lasker Award for Public Service, just to name a few. He has received 36 honorary degrees from universities in the U.S. and abroad. It is my privilege to welcome to the lectern our commencement speaker, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Thank you very much, Dr. Spiegel, for that kind introduction. Members of the faculty, family members, and you, the graduates of the class of 2011. It is a personal pleasure and an honor to deliver this commencement address to the Albert Einstein School of Medicine. Now, it was a very natural reflex for me in preparing for this address to reflect back to my own graduation from medical school for some hints as to what I might say. Well, that was a big mistake, because I must confess that I cannot remember a word of what the commencement speaker said, or even who he or she was. And so, 30 or more years from now, you almost certainly will not remember what I tell you here today, no matter what I say. However, you will not have to remember what I say, since what I'm going to tell you over the next few minutes you will indeed experience yourself, and that you will surely remember, even though you don't remember who told it to you. So the first thing that comes to my mind, looking back on all of this, is the extraordinary dynamic nature of our health profession. Even though medicine and its related disciplines are based on fundamental principles that do not change, I certainly did not fully appreciate at the time that I graduated how dramatically the biological sciences in general and my chosen field of medicine would change. What I can see now is that certain things have undergone extraordinary change, whereas other things have not and should not have changed. And so it's in this context that I'd like to share some brief thoughts with you as you leave here today armed with your newly developed professional skills. One thing for certain is that you will bear witness to a constant and at times seemingly overwhelming evolution of scientific and technological advances. You will feel, as I did then and actually still do now to this day, at once both exhilarated and intimidated. For the physicians in the group, you will be learning the art of practicing medicine at the same time as you're trying to keep up with the science of this field that will be advancing at a breathtaking speed. For the non-physicians in the group, the experience will be quite similar. The evolution in medicine and the biological sciences that you will experience will be beyond your control, but you will be part of it, and you will also evolve as individual professionals and human beings. Be assured that being bored will not be a problem for you. Let me give you a personal example of the kinds of dramatic evolutions and changes that can occur totally beyond one's control and that can profoundly impact one's career. In 1968, I finished my residency in internal medicine at the New York Hospital Cornell Medical Center. That same year, public health scholars were opining and even testifying before Congress that with the advent of antibiotics, vaccines, and public health measures, and I take a quote from one of these testimonies, the war against infectious diseases had been won, and we should focus our efforts on other areas of research and public health. Now, as fate would have it, at that time, I was on my way to begin, of all things, an infectious diseases fellowship at the NIH. So I remember reflecting as I drove through the Lincoln Tunnel and south on the New Jersey Turnpike to Bethesda, Maryland, as the words of the pundits resonated in my mind, I felt somewhat ambivalent about my career choice, to say the least. Was I entering into a disappearing subspecialty? Well, apparently not, for within a few years, scattered cases of a strange wasting disease were being noticed in sub-Saharan Africa by missionaries and physicians who could not clearly distinguish these cases from the myriad of public health issues that had been confronting Southern Africa for centuries. However, 13 years after I arrived at NIH, the first cases of what would be known as AIDS were reported in California and right here in New York City. That report from the CDC came out 30 years ago this coming Sunday on June 5th, 1981. Very quickly thereafter, the AIDS pandemic was clearly recognized as a new disease, and with that, my professional career, if not my entire life, was transformed. Furthermore, it did not stop with HIV/AIDS, for now we find ourselves in a most unusual situation regarding public health threats. Indeed, in addition to AIDS, we have witnessed the threat of nationally occurring, emerging, and re-emerging diseases, infections such as SARS, West Nile virus, extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis, dengue emerging in Puerto Rico and southern Florida, cholera in Haiti, as well as the constant threat of deliberately released microbes by bioterrorists, and the most recent experience we had last year with the pandemic H1N1 flu. All of this was unimaginable at the time that I graduated from medical school, but unfortunately, it is now part of our daily lives and occupies much of my professional life. Now, believe me, the same unpredictable elements of public health, medicine, and biomedical science are going to confront you regardless of what subspecialty or specialty of medicine that you pursue or what particular area of biomedical science you enter. I do not know now, today, what form they are going to take, but they surely will occur. So what should all of you be told now today as future physicians, healthcare providers, and/or biomedical scientists? I believe it relates to the issue of what I call the paradox of graduation. It is understandable that on this day you feel that you are no longer really a student. But let me tell you that this is just an illusion. In my own case, it became painfully apparent shortly after graduation from medical school that my student days had actually just begun. For we are all perpetual students, and inherent to the field of medicine and the biological sciences is the fact that the mosaic of our knowledge and experiences is eternally unfinished. Now, being a perpetual student does not mean being frozen at a certain stage of life, not at all. Rather, it is a state of mind that can be invigorating and even can serve as the catalyst to continually improve yourself, meet the challenges that await you, and fulfill your enormous potential. Now, there are two sides to this concept. The good news is that it will, as I just mentioned, be very difficult to get bored, and the level of self-fulfillment is going to be very high. The sobering news is that you will likely develop a sense of low-grade anxiety and a nagging feeling of inadequacy, as if we all do not have enough of that anyway as we prepare to enter our house staff or other postdoctoral or advanced degree training. That certainly was the case with me. But this feeling is not necessarily all bad, since it can be transformed into something quite productive and positive. So when you realize and admit to yourself, as I did, that you will never know as much as you want to or need to know, and that you are participating in a dynamic process with a steep learning curve, you really have to strike a delicate balance. On the one hand, you cannot be immobilized by this potentially frightening concept, and you should certainly experience fully the joys of life. In other words, don't forget about having some fun. On the other hand, it should create a healthy, positive, and productive tension whereby you never feel completely comfortable. And so, how about that? Just when you thought that it would be smooth sailing from here on, you have this guy up here telling you that you will never feel completely comfortable. However, it is this tension that can actually serve as the catalyst to constantly improve yourself and fulfill your enormous potential. Honestly, to this very day, I still feel such a productive tension, whether it is in my lab, seeing patients, or running an institute. It has become part of me, and I believe that it has helped me greatly rather than hurt me in any way at all. Now, given what is happening in our world today in the context of your chosen professions, I want to turn for just a moment to the issue of global health. As an infectious disease physician, for many years I obviously had been aware at a certain level of the broad issue of global health and the extraordinary health disparities between developed and developing worlds. However, it was my intense involvement with the basic and clinical research and public health issues surrounding the global AIDS pandemic that allowed me to truly begin to appreciate the ramifications of the globality of health issues. To be sure, This goes well beyond the field of infectious diseases to include virtually every subspecialty of the medical profession. I'd like to explore this for a moment with you. For the physicians in the group, most of you will be concerned about matters that seemingly apply only to this country. That is understandable. However, be assured that in the broad sense, what you all will be doing is linked directly and indirectly to the health of all the citizens of the world. It is so clear now in the early years of the 21st century that we live in a global community, and linkages exist between what we do in medicine and the biomedical sciences in this country and what is done and will be done in other nations of the world. The pundits who opined that the era of infectious diseases was over as I was graduating from medical school did not see beyond the borders of our nation to the rest of the world, where at that time, and even today, there are almost 1 million deaths from malaria each year, mostly among African infants, where there are 1.7 million deaths from TB, mostly in developing countries. It is noteworthy that we did not have then, and we do not have now, an effective vaccine for either of these global and historic scourges. Think, if these were diseases predominantly of the developed world, we would have vaccines for both right now. Now, President George W. Bush transformed our commitment to global health by establishing the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief in 2003, which has already saved close to 4 million lives in the developing world. It is extremely important for our nation to continue and even strengthen this commitment, even in our current situation of restricted resources, by adequately funding the United States' global health initiative that goes beyond HIV/AIDS to include TB, malaria, neglected tropical diseases, maternal and child health, nutrition, family planning, and reproductive health. Despite all the turmoil in the world and the economic stress that our nation is under right now, the United States of America is still the world's only superpower, and it is clearly the world's leader in the fields of medicine and the biomedical sciences. And as such, we have a responsibility to the rest of the world, particularly to poor nations, to use that status in a contributory and generous manner. Also, you will be setting the example, and the world will look to you for leadership, be it in clinical medicine, teaching, research, administration, or public health. Indeed, your generation of physicians and biomedical scientists will serve as the gold standard for the rest of the world. Now, I appreciate that it is difficult for you to think of yourselves in this context at this particular stage in your career, but it unquestionably is going to be the case. Finally, we've been considering over the past few minutes the changes that we can expect to occur in our profession over the coming years. But what about those aspects of medicines that hopefully will never change? I refer to the fundamental principles that have guided past generations of physicians, principles that are sometimes forgotten or neglected a bit in the current technological world of modern medicine, and unfortunately may be difficult to execute in the restrictions of a managed care setting. These are principles that are the foundation of the joy and the beauty of what we do. Integrity, unselfishness, perseverance, inquisitiveness, and a compelling thirst for knowledge, with the patient as the focus and beneficiary of all that you do professionally. If you are a physician or other healthcare provider, You must have nothing less than complete commitment towards your patient and establish a relationship based on sensitivity, comfort, compassion, reassurance, and respect. One of the legendary American physicians, Francis W. Peabody, who lived from 1881 to 1927, said it so well, and I quote, "One of the essential qualities of the clinician is interest in humanity, for the secret of the care of the patient is in caring for the patient." Likewise, if you're a basic scientist, your integrity, your scholarship, and your commitment should match the importance of your task, the advancement of knowledge for the good of humankind. My colleagues, you will leave here today as professionals in a most noble field. You've been privileged, and with this privilege comes responsibilities. May you carry these responsibilities with pride and conviction, and I strongly hope that you will experience great joy and satisfaction in our shared profession. Congratulations to you, to your families, and to your loved ones. Good luck, and God bless you.
Dr. Fauci, we can't express how much we appreciate this inspirational talk and the inspiration of your career, but we can at least hand you this token of appreciation and also remind you of the words of Senator Arlen Specter, who used to say to us as he concluded NIH congressional hearings, "Hurry back to the NIH and continue the important work you're doing." Take care.
Thank you.